Good morning. This is the time and the place for the zoning hearing for April 27, 2011. My name is Roger Kiesel. I will be conducting the hearing as hearing officer. We have one case today, and relevant exhibits are posted on the panels located directly behind me. As I said before, there's one case on the agenda. It's a variance request. Under the provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30.43 of the Glendale Municipal Code, a variance shall be granted if four required findings are present. The first finding is that the strict application of the ordinance would result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship, inconsistent with the general purposes and intent of the ordinance. The second finding is that there are exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to the property involved or to the intended use or development of the property that do not generally apply to other property in the same zone or neighborhood. The third finding is that the granting of the variance will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property or improvements in such zone or neighborhood in which the property is located. And then finally, the granting of the variance will not be contrary to the objectives of the ordinance. If evidence presented in the application and at the hearing meets the criteria just described, then the hearing officer can either approve or impose conditions for approval on the case in question. If the findings of fact are not evident, then the request will be denied. Public notice. Notification of this hearing was accomplished by the use of public notices which were mailed to the property owners located within 500 feet of the subject property, physically posted on the site in question, and placed in the local newspaper. The hearing will proceed as follows. First, I'll read the description of the application request. Second, I'll read the reports received by the other city departments and other letters or communications from interested parties. The case planner will then make a brief overview of the case, give analysis, and make a recommendation. The applicant will be asked to come forward stating both name and address and will be asked to present the case within a 15-minute time limit. Then others in support of or in opposition to the application and interested parties will be asked to come forward to speak, again clearly stating both name and address within a 3-minute time limit. Finally, the applicant will be given the opportunity to make closing comments if desired in response to testimony given by the preceding speakers within a 5-minute time limit. Then the hearing will be closed and the case taken under submission. Decision. After the hearing, the decision will be prepared in writing and will be in the form of a letter sent to the applicant and to all persons who responded to the public notice, either by speaking at the hearing or by submitting written responses, and have provided their names and mailing address. The date of the decision will be the date appearing on the letter. Appeals. Under the provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30.62, the Glendale Municipal Code, the decision may be appealed to the Planning Commission within 15 days of the date of the decision. Anyone wishing to appeal may obtain forms and brochures on the procedures from the Building and Safety Section Permit Services Center, located on the same floor of the building. Speaker cards. If you wish to speak, please write your name and address on one of the speaker's forms, which have been provided at the front door, and submit it to one of the assistants. I would like to inform everyone that the official proceedings of the zoning administrator's hearing are recorded on tape as part of the public record. Typically this meeting is live on TV. Unfortunately, there's a conflicting meeting today, so we're being taped. We're not live, and if you want to view the tape, I believe you can either go over to the city clerk's office or it's going to be on delay on GTV6. So for your information. Actual hearing. We're down to the, let me read the description of the case. We have one case on the agenda. It's variance case number PVAR 2011-004. The applicant is Asik Manachakarian. The address of the property is 1833 Kirkby Road. And the project is to construct a new 1,392 square foot one-story single-family residence on a 6,300 square foot lot, as well as a garage. And there are a number of variances associated with that. Let's see. We've got a couple comments from other departments. From Neighborhood Services Division, the increased height of the proposed retaining walls adds to the mass of the house that may be excessive for the size of the lot. And that appears not to be a variance request anymore, and I'll ask for the case planner for clarification. Also, insufficient parking continues to be a frustration for residents throughout the community. Glendale streets are already negatively impacted by a lack of parking throughout the local residential neighborhoods. Neighborhood Services has concerns regarding approval of any entitlement request, which may further exacerbate the problem. Traffic and Transportation had no concerns related to their jurisdiction. From Dan Hardgrove, who is the Maintenance Services Administrator, current plans as proposed do not indicate changes to the previously approved project footprint, including vertical dimensions on the structure and permitted retaining walls within the tree protection zone. Applicant must comply with all previous indigenous tree protection measures issued for the project. Any further work proposed within the tree protection zone must comply with current indigenous tree ordinance. And then from engineering, it looks like they're pretty standard comments. A revised drainage plan shall be submitted to the engineering division for engineering division's review and approval. Method of discharge shall be for on-site drainage shall be approved by the city engineer. The project must comply with the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System requirements and street improvements. Okay. And then we did get some information from James Cohen, who is a neighbor. Regarding trash container restrictions, I'll read the correspondence. According to Glendale Waste Management, it is unlawful for trash containers to be stored or remain on city property other than a specific period of time for collection. Trash containers must be removed by 8 p.m. on the day of collection. The property at 1833 Kirkby Road has no street level area that can accommodate trash containers. The containers will need to be removed from the street each week and either carried up the narrow stairway onto the property or more likely stored inside the structure designated as the garage. The interior of the building is less than 17 feet wide. There is an existing raised interior foundation, plus the city required support of the internal walls. Now with the storage of 3 trash containers, that will further reduce the space available. The net result is that this building is about as wide as a standard single-car garage. It should be noted that the interior length of the building is less than 17 feet. And then there are a couple exhibits with that. The second correspondence from Mr. Cohen is a property profile for the property. And then the third is also from Mr. Cohen on Kirkby Road, the immediate vicinity, Kirkby Road and the immediate vicinity has very restricted off-street parking. Kirkby Road is within the Glendale Community College restricted parking zone. On days the school is in session, it requires a permit to park on Kirkby Road and the surrounding streets. The closest non-restricted parking is approximately 5 blocks north on Verdugo Road. Actually, I probably should have done this earlier, but let me just go into the variance requests. So as I said before, the project is the construction of a single-family dwelling. The applicant has submitted applications for setback and standards variances, and those variances are to have a driveway less than 18 feet in length. The second variance is to build on a substandard lot that is less than 7,500 square feet in area. The third variance is to construct a new single-family residence with less than the minimum 10-foot interior setback. The fourth variance is to provide one non-conforming covered and enclosed garage instead of the required two. And then the final is that there is less than a 5-foot separation between retaining walls on the site, which 5 foot is the minimum. Okay. Why don't I ask the case planner, Brad Cullen, to come up and do a presentation? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Kiesel. As mentioned, this is variance case PBAR 2011-004, located at 1833 Kirkby Road. The proposal is to construct a new 1,392 square foot, one-story single-family dwelling on a 6,300 square foot lot. There are 5 variances in total that are being requested. The first, as mentioned, is a setback variance, where the applicant is proposing a 2-foot, 10-inch interior setback where 10 foot is required. Then there are 4 standards variances. One is to allow a residence on a 6,300 square foot substandard lot where the minimum lot area is 7,500 square feet. The second is to allow an existing nonconforming 1-car covered enclosed garage to remain while a 2-car covered and enclosed garage is required. The third is to allow a driveway to have a 2.4 foot length instead of the required 18 feet. And the fourth standards variance is a request for a 2-foot 6-inch and a 4-foot 4-inch separation between retaining walls where 5 feet is required. The project was determined to be categorically exempt from CEQA. There was 2 previous permits for the subject property. First is building permit BC 2010-0172, which was for an addition and remodel to the existing house, or to the existing house. The second permit is BC 2008-0180, which is repair to the existing nonconforming 1-car garage. And a related permit that is concurrent as of this time is BC 2008-0271, which is for a detached guest house. Now, as a quick note about the guest house, construction is allowed to continue on this, but it cannot be finalized until and unless the variances are either approved or approved with conditions. If the variances are approved and goes through the design review process and through plan check, once the house and garage are finalized, then the guest house can be finalized, but only once those 2 are signed off can the guest house be signed off. The zoning for the property is R1R, which is a restricted residential zone located in Floor Area District 2. The subject property, as mentioned, is on a 6,300 square foot irregularly shaped lot. The non-conforming one-car garage is located on a 15-foot by 20-foot pad that is approximately 17 feet below the floor level of the guest house, 10 feet below the level of the house. The upper portion of the lot slopes down about 12 feet from east to west. Currently, the site consists of framing for a single-family residence, a non-conforming one-car garage, and a guest house. It should be noted that a permit was issued for addition to the existing single-family residence and repair work to the existing non-conforming one-car garage. During construction, more than 50% of the total existing walls and roof area were removed or abandoned in place. Per Municipal Code Section 30.60.040B2, the house is considered new and required to meet today's zoning code requirements. The guest house is permitted under construction. As mentioned, it cannot be finalized until the house and garage have obtained their final sign-off from Building and Safety. In 1915, the property was developed with a 946 square foot single-story, single-family house and garage. In 1920, a guest house was constructed. The house was vacant and in disrepair for many years until the current owners purchased the property in 2008 and attempted to upgrade it. As part of the upgrade, the owners were proposing to add 624 square feet to the rear of the existing house. Since the existing non-conforming one-car garage did not meet the code required 2 covered and enclosed parking spaces, the owners applied and were approved for a parking reduction permit from the zoning administrator. This application was appealed by the neighbors, and the decision was reversed by the Planning Commission, therefore denying the parking reduction permit application. The owners then scaled back their proposed addition to less than 100 square feet and were applied and were approved with conditions for administrative exception. Administrative exception was for a minor addition without bringing the parking up to code. The owners then applied and were issued a building permit for the addition to the house, new guest house, repair work to the garage and retaining walls, and new retaining walls on the side of the house and guest house. During construction, the owners removed and/or abandoned in place more than 50% of the total wall and roof area of the main house. Because they removed more than 50%, the house must comply with all current zoning code requirements. As mentioned, there are 5 variances in total being requested, 1 setback variance and 4 standards variances. In order to consider approval of a variance, there are 4 findings that are required to be met. The first is the strict application of the provisions of any such ordinance which would result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship inconsistent with the general purposes and intent of the ordinance. The second, there are exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to the property involved or to the intended use or development of the property that do not apply generally to other property in the same zone or neighborhood. Third, that the granting of the variance will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to property or improvements in such zone or neighborhood in which the property is located. And last, the granting of the variance will not be contrary to the objectives of the ordinance. Now, these 4 findings are required to all be met in order to be considered for approval of the variances.
Brad, can I interject for one
Sorry.
second? Can you go over where each of those variances are on the site plan?
The setback variance for the interior yard, which is being requested, is along this portion here.
That's the
Setback
entire north side, all of it.
Correct.
Okay.
The
okay.
closest point is 2 foot 10 inches.
Okay.
The other request is to have a 1-car non-conforming garage located in this portion here, which is approximately 15 by 20. The property, approximately 14 by 16 inside dimensions on the garage.
Okay.
The third variance is to have a requirement is 18 feet for the driveway. The applicant is proposing approximately 3 feet. And then the final variance request is for lot area to be less than 7,500. Now, something else
How
to
about
mention.
the retaining wall separation?
Retaining wall separation is between the walls on this portion here. The requirement is 5 feet, and also there's less than 5 feet over here. One thing, too, that should be mentioned is in the original application, there was a request for retaining wall height to exceed that allowed, but the retaining walls that are out there, which are these walls that are along the walkway, while they're over height, they're considered existing or legal non-conforming, and the requirement for a variance for those was not required because it's not relative or related to the house being considered new.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Staff believes that the 3 out of the 4 findings cannot be made in a positive way for the setback variance. For in relation to the standards variances, staff believes that all 4 findings can be met for each of the 4 requests of the standards variances. Staff believes that the project is not able to address all the required findings for the setback variance, however, is able to address all the findings for the 4 standards variance requests. In addition, staff believes the proposed house and guest house comply with the hillside design guidelines and the hillside development review policy. Staff is recommending denial of the requested setback variance and approval of the requested standards variance applications with recommended conditions, which are attached. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available if you have any other questions.
Okay. Why don't I call the applicant up, and I've got some questions, but why don't we get everybody to speak first? And
Good morning. My name is Asik Menachekanian. I am the co-owner of the property, and my address is 3467 Ocean View Boulevard, Suite H, Glendale. I'm sorry, do you want to go ahead and, you said that you have some questions? Then
I want to, at this point, I may interrupt you,
Oh,
but
sure.
I want to I'll wait until everybody talks, and then I'll.
All right, sure. So just kind of give you a little bit of history, even though Mr. Collins and Colin and my neighbors, they all know almost what's happening. Just kind of, give you a heads up for, as Mr. Collins mentioned, we got a permit for guest unit remodeling, guest unit and house remodeling on May 2008, thinking of, we could kind of, just remodel the guest unit, but unfortunately, the condition was too bad. We couldn't do anything. Therefore, we got a permit for a new guest house and a retaining wall next to north of the guest house on August 2008. And also, after a long story short, we got a permit for 99 square feet addition to the main house, which is the administrative exemption for one-car garage. And we started to work. So basically, that 1,152 square feet existing, previously existing building did not have any foundation. So we provided foundation for the entire that area. I just want to present you these pictures showing that the condition of the property when we purchased, which was kind of, just we saw bottles of beer and, just drugs and, just was a mess. So these are the pictures, guest house, the flooring, and, the condition of the stud wall behind the guest house, which used to work, as a retaining wall. And the ceiling was kind of, rotten and, bunch of branches. So we'll demolish that. This is the main house. See the flooring and no foundation at all around the main house.
So this is the guest house here, these upper pictures. I'm going to write on this.
Yes, sir. Okay. So these are guest house. I'm sorry, I just kind of, did this morning, so I cannot tell. This is the entry. This is the garage. Entry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Oh, this is the, yeah.
That's the garage, and it kind of, not permitted structure on top. We remove that, and the entry walkway to the main house.
Okay.
And these are all kind of just, again, the entry. See, all the kind of, just vegetation.
All right.
And this is the main house.
All right.
Thank you. So from the day first, our goal was to clean the property. As I mentioned, that, we noticed that, drug use, alcohol use on the property. There was no door, nothing, and people used to walk in and, do whatever they want to do. The day first, we tried to kind of clean the property, organize the property, get the permits, and, start, working on it, make it a nice kind of neighborhood, and spoke to the neighbors and, just try to be as positive as possible. For the findings, for finding A and B, which says that this is kind of hardship for us, we believe that the width of the width of the building is the way that if we provide the setback for that, that will kind of leaves us 20 feet of space, which is not enough for a kind of decent residential unit. And this is a hardship. And also the main issue is the garage. I provided a sketch showing that no matter what we do, this is impossible to provide any kind of garage other than this in the property without violating the current zoning requirements.
What did you submit?
I did not submit. I think that, we cannot provide a new two-car garage in the property without violating the existing zoning code.
Okay. Okay.
So,
you didn't submit anything that demonstrates that. You
no,
just. Okay.
I have this. If you may allow me, I could kind of present it to you.
Okay. Sure.
Sorry, one more time.
Oh, this is what you are going to submit.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So this shows if we were to demolish the existing garage, which is in here, and provide a garage here, excavate the building and provide 10 feet and 10 feet setbacks, and with regard to the height of the dirt, which is about 17 feet, we have to provide huge retaining walls here, at least 12 or 18 inches wide. And then again, with providing this, we are violating the dimension of the garage. So we end up having 18 feet by, let's say, 20 feet of garage, which is required minimum of 20 feet. On top of this, there is a guest unit. So then in that case, we have to demolish the guest unit that we already got a permit. So this is one hardship. And also for the radius, since, we have 10 feet of frontage, again, we are kind of, just taking a part of the neighbor's property in order to provide that radius. On the second case, the same story. If we were to provide a garage on top of the existing pad, providing this ramp all the way to the end, so this would be the end of the ramp, again, we would kind of, violate the zoning code going over the neighbor's property here. Then we have to demolish the entire this guest unit because there is no room. The existing guest unit is somewhere in here. We cannot provide that. And also the existing building, residential building, would be maximum half of what we have now. because this is going to be the end of the ramp, and 20 feet is the garage, and then beyond that would be the house.
So driveway
Yes.
instead of, okay.
Yes.
Goes, so there.
Correct. So from 0 goes all the way to plus 30 feet, which is about the elevation, existing elevation at this point.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. So basically for the finding A and B, that would be the answer. And finding C is why will granting of variance not be detrimental to the public welfare? This building was, as Mr. Colley mentioned, existed from 1915 and the guest house from 1920. So what we are proposing is to add 240 square feet to the existing footprint of the house, which we already got permit for that. The existing house is 1,152 square feet, plus 240 would be 1,392 square feet. So this is our only request, because we used to have, sorry.
That's okay, go on, I have a
Because we
clarification.
used to have a guest house, we replaced that with a new one, and the existing house was 1,152 square feet, which is asking to add 240 square feet to that house. So,
Okay, can you come up here and point out to me where the, well, let me make it clear that because more than 50% of the house was demolished, we are considering this a new house.
right.
But can you point out to me where the existing house is and where the additions are proposed?
Sure, sure. This is the footprint of existing house. Of course, going kind of, just angled here and all the way to this point. So basically, this is the existing footprint of the house.
Okay.
And we already had a permit for 99 square feet addition and a patio, which would come up to this point, about 12 feet or so on this direction. So basically, what we have is a permit for foundation for the entire this area, a little bit less than on this side.
So.
Much clear here. Much clear here. This is the existing footprint of the house.
So the dining room, there's a little pop out there, and then
Yes.
all that area.
Yeah. This area and also this area,
Okay.
we propose to be a part of that 240 square feet of addition.
Okay, so of the,
And this area, I'm sorry.
so that, the bedroom plus the kitchen pop out plus
Right.
the dining room pop out
Yes.
adds up to two.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And these are the permits for all these additions.
Okay.
If you want to come
Okay.
and take a look at it. So on condition C, what we are saying is that, those buildings were existed from 1915, so there is no problem as long as the public welfare goes. We're granting on item D, why granting variance? So everything we have, except with the setback, is based on, is with the kind of, okay with current code, landscaping and lot coverage, flow area ratio, and height of the building. Basically, everything we have now on the property is existing. Retaining walls, landscaping, and existing garage, existing footprint of the building, all existing. So what we did is just kind of, repaired some of them and maintained, cleaned. That's it, nothing else.
Okay. Can you go over more fully how you feel like you meet the variance findings, particularly for the setback ordinance, since that's, the setback variance, since that's the one that staff is recommending denial?
Right.
And, so it's clear to me?
Yeah, sure. Since, the width of the property, at least on that portion, is 40 feet. So we believe if we provide 10 feet of setback, so we would have 10 and 10, the remaining is 20 feet, which is not enough width for a kind of, normal residential unit. So this is what we believe. On the sides, we have no problem. The only problem is the 40 feet of the width of the property.
Okay.
And it's, I believe, unfair to just kind of, have 10 feet of setback for residential unit because, we're just kind of, not having enough room for a normal residential unit.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that was... Can you address finding 4 related to that? The granting of the variance will not be contrary to the objectives of the ordinance?
As I mentioned, with the exception of the garage and the north setback of the residential unit, everything else is kind of, based on the current zoning code. As far as landscaping, height of the building, and the floor area ratio and lot coverage. They're all consistent with the current zoning code.
Right. I mean, I get that, but okay, how is the objective of the setback being met if we're requiring 10 feet now and you're providing, granted at the very minimum 2.5 feet, how is that 2.5 feet meeting the objectives of the ordinance, which say 10 feet?
Right.
Do you have a...
I mean, but we justify that saying that, that 20 feet is not a good size for a living space. So that's our objective. On top of that, the property on the north has a higher elevation. So basically, if they stand in the property, they see probably a part of our roof, not the wall. Whereas the other property, which is next to us, on south of us, it's a lower than us. Mm-hmm. Going towards the kind of edge of that property line will kind of just squeeze that open space between that property and their building and our building, because their building is about maybe 5 feet from property line. They will go. Whereas the other side is kind of, because that's higher, so that's okay for us to have a smaller kind of, setback. If this is kind of, enough explanation for you.
Okay.
I could draw a section for you and explain this to you.
No, actually, I was out on the site yesterday, so I sort of know the topography.
Okay.
And actually, while I'm on that subject, I did want to acknowledge I was on the site yesterday, and I spoke with a Jim Cohen and a Brad Cobb.
Right.
Just for everybody's reference.
Okay.
So in terms of the setback ordinance, or the setback variance, you're saying that would be difficult to design a house that's 20 feet in width because of the 40-foot lot taking out the 20 feet in setback
Right.
area would result in a 20-foot wide
Right.
house.
That would be a kind of box 20 feet by the length.
Whatever the length is.
It's just
yeah.
kind of ugly box.
Okay. All right. I've got some questions, but I want to, are you done with your presentation?
Yes.
Okay, okay. What I'll do is I'll call up the other speakers, and then if I've got questions, I'll.
Sure.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, the first one is Stephen Goldstein.
I'm going to defer to Mr. Cohen first because mine.
Oh, okay, okay. Mr. Cohen.
Jim Cohen, 1851 Kirkby Road. Where to begin? I guess with a setback. I probably first want to mention that the owner builder is on his website with 20 years experience as an architect, an AIA architect. So I find it interesting that the condition of the building came as a shock and a surprise to him. He had access to it. From the beginning, it appears to us as though he's trying to build two on a lot. And the reason for my supplying the file with the title reports is it's listed as a duplex in there. And I think I have another title report that lists it as two on a lot. And that information was supplied by the current owner, that didn't appear out of thin air. Again, not in any particular order. The foundation that is now under the house was originally built by this gentleman without a permit, and the city discovered that it was there and required that he put a permit in, or get a permit and prove up on the structural integrity. So the existing foundation was put in by him. As far as use of lot, I went on the internet, I think 3 days ago, and pulled up 20-foot wide house plans and got 3.4 million hits. So there apparently are off the shelf. I can order any number of 20-foot wide floor plans to fit a lot that's 150 feet long. He has plenty of room on the lot to have a 10-foot setback. He would have had even more room if he hadn't rushed to build a guest house. So the fact that he can't onto the garage, can't dig into the hill for the garage or move the garage because it'll interfere with the guest house, he built the guest house. It wasn't there interfering with anything, but he wanted to establish at least one of the two rental dwellings on the property. I'm not an expert on building. I find it unusual that somebody would build and almost complete one structure before they start on another. His comment was that everything is existing. Nothing was existing. The foundation wasn't existing. The guest house wasn't existing. The garage was existing, and a very dilapidated house that he originally said he was going to remodel. Not enough room for a normal house. My house is less than 20 feet wide, and there's several others on the street that are less than 20 feet wide. Is that my 3-minute ding-dong there?
It appears so.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Mr. Goldstein, do you want to finish up on his?
Yes.
Okay.
Morning. I'd like to say that in the 3 years I've been there, during this construction, my driveway, I live at 1829 Kirkby Road, right below 1833. My driveway has been blocked several occasions. Most of the time there's cars there and then a truck there. And if I can get in my driveway, I have to squeeze in on the left and scratch up the side of my car or my van. And also, I'm a painting contractor for 32 years. I've worked on homes from La Jolla to Santa Barbara, and I've seen many homes that were less than 20 feet wide. I've never worked on a project where the guest house was built first. I never saw that ever in 32 years. The other thing is that the front door of the guest house is facing my property. He's going to put the front door of the main house facing my property, bearing down on my property. The noise and the lack of privacy is going to be tremendous. I think that's about it. Oh, anyway, in South Pasadena, they have many homes they call train houses. They're less than 20 feet wide on long, long lots. So
Okay,
I think that's it. Thank you.
thanks. Mr. Moe.
My name is John Moe. I live at 1861 Kirkby Road, and I have a couple of concerns. The first one is echoing what Mr. Cohen said, is that I'm concerned that it really looks like it's two on a lot, and we have single-family residences in our area. And the second thing is, if you do have two on a lot, my second concern is that it really does impact the parking, because if you've got a single-family residence which has got 3 bedrooms and 2 baths, then you're going to be looking at 2 cars for that. And if you've got a guest house, I mean, let's face it, you're not going to let your guest house sit there empty. You're going to rent it out. And if you rent it out, that's at least 1 more car there. So we've got 1-car garage, and we need at least 3 cars, parking for 3 cars. So, you know, I think that the way it's set up, it hasn't been done very well. Because once you build a guest house, then you're saying, well, that's okay, because it was already there before, but then what's going to happen? You're going to have somebody park in a car that's going to be renting that guest house. Then you're going to build a 2-car single-family home with 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. Well, that's another 2 cars there. So I don't know. It just doesn't seem like you're really addressing the issue here. Maybe you are, but basically it's a really problem with the impact on the parking, which I think is a big one. And plus, I think it also goes against the nature of the neighborhood to say, yeah, you can have a guest house, because you're really saying, hey, you can have 2 different groups of people in there. Living on this particular lot, which I think is contrary to the restricted single-family residence code for the area. So those are my 2 concerns.
Okay,
Thank
you. Let me just clarify something, since a couple people have mentioned it. The property, the subject property, as well as most of the property around it, I don't know for how far, is zoned R1R, which is a single-family zone. Any single-family zone in the city is, or any property in a single-family zone in the city is allowed to have a guest house. There are constraints as to how big the guest house is and what sorts of facilities are in a guest house, but they are allowed to have a guest house. Given that one of the facility constraints of a guest house is no full kitchen, it would be difficult, I think, to rent out something like that. And certainly, you know, if the property is advertised as a duplex, that isn't consistent with the zoning. So I just thought I'd make that clear. Maybe later. Jane Costanzo?
Very good.
Okay, thanks.
I'm Jane Costanzo. We live at 1856 Kirkby Road. And our concern, what John Moe was talking about, is the parking. Because now he's talking 1,300 square feet plus the 500 square foot guest house. So there's a lot of space, room for parking 1 car. Our street, there is no on-street parking. Everybody on our road has a driveway. I can park 5 cars in my driveway. Everybody has places to park, even the little houses that are 700, 800 square feet. They have 2 or 3, or actually 5 places to park. If somebody comes to visit this house, they can't park. They can't park down on Lower Kirkby because it is restricted. They have to go somewhere else. And we would just as soon people are not parking illegally on our street because it's a fire zone. It's where the ambulance comes up. We don't want parking. Well, it's illegal to park on the street. And so whoever buys that house or whoever lives in that house can park one car. And especially if they've got 1,900 square feet of living space, it doesn't make sense.
Okay. Could you come back up here for a second, Ms. Constant? I've got a question for you. You refer to Lower Kirkby and
Upper Kirkby. Yes.
And is the delineation where the street sort of veers to the north a little bit and gets, I think, even a little bit narrower?
That's my delineation, yeah. When it goes off to the right, that's a private road. When it comes off to the left, the street narrows.
Okay. And for the whole length from Verdugo on up is no street parking?
No, there is street parking on Lower Kirkby from Verdugo Road to the fork. And you can only park on one side of the street, the north side of the street.
Okay.
And it is restricted. You must have a permit. to park.
Okay. But then once you get to the upper part of the street, it's
No
restricted on
parking.
both sides.
It's a fire lane. There
Okay.
is no parking.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Cheryl Gillen? Good
morning. And Upper Kirkby is actually only one lane. And a sidebar to parking and driveway up there is that when this was originally developed, it was a private road up to Shoal Canyon. I think there was a gentleman named Mr. Kirkby that owned all this property, sold off some of the property, and back in, say, 1915, 1920, the majority of the people up there had horses, not cars. So whatever was built up on that house at that time, who knows what was built legally or illegally or what the actual approved square footage would have been originally for those dwellings up there, but certainly they didn't have cars. I'm sure that the garage came much after the houses were built, and it was horse access. I am the owner of 1841 Kirkby Road. It's my perception that the owner and the builder and the developer of 1833 runs this project by the motto, it is easier to ask for forgiveness than it is for permission. If you review the number of the times this project has been stopped to revise the building plans, you would be aware of that. What is requested is inappropriate for Kirkby Road. I am sorry that the developer didn't foresee this problem when he first saw the property and purchased it. It was my request that anyone making judgment on this property visit the site before judgment is made. I understand you were up there yesterday.
I was.
You can see some of the uniqueness from it. Assuming, for example, you wanted to put a baby grand piano on that property. Just assuming. Or just moving large furniture up that little pathway. Whoever buys that property would have a problem. Any development that would need more than a car and a half parking, a space and a half parking, would impact the homeowners on Kirkby Road. It is my understanding that the developer built this project to be sold. He's not going to live in it. It's for his personal use. Or it will never be for his personal use. Just keeping that in mind, whatever he does will impact all of us forever. It will only impact him until he is able to get the permit and make his money and leave. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandy Remy? I'm sorry? Brame.
Sandy Brame. I live at 1841 Kirkby Road. Cheryl Gillum is the owner of the property. I'm glad that you were actually at the property yesterday so you could see how the neighborhood is. I have a couple of concerns. I live at the fork. I live, my house is right the one that where the fork is. So if there is, again, more than one car parking there, that's going to increase the foot traffic in front of my house. I'm the one that they're all going to be walking past to get up to the other address. I mean, it's silly. My house is 12 feet wide, I think, you know, and if you looked at the neighborhood up there, you can see all of the houses are very small, cottage-like. You know, it's our little canyon. I mean, this house that they have built, the guest house that they have finished already, I think is like 3 times as large as the original structure that was up there. So, I mean, I know that he's already got that permitted and everything. I want to say one thing about the condition of the home that was up there was in horrific condition. There was a man who lived there, and he had left it vacant for very many years. But my backyard looks onto that property. There were no transients up there. There was no drug use up there. I have no idea what they are talking about. My husband, in fact, commented on that on the last thing, and I wish he was here today, but he's working. But my husband's a big, tough guy. There's not a chance there was going to be a transient living up in that home. Anyway, that's it, I guess. Thank you.
Okay. All right, did you want to, do you have a question? You need to come up and speak to the mic.
I'm still Jim Cohen, and I still live on Kirkby. Your comment up on the guest house, I understand the issue is that space available on the lot, you can build a guest house. Is that correct? In other words, you need a certain amount of usable land in order to construct a guest house. There's a formula that says if you have X square footage of unused property, then you can build a guest house on the property as long as it conforms to the setbacks and
Yeah, their floor area ratio and their lot coverage requirements.
right.
I think that's what you're referring to, yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
So I guess my comment then is, if the guest house did not exist, there would be more land there to build a main house on. So the guest house interfering with building arguably a reasonable size house is kind of a self-inflicted wound. He built the guest house and now says, I need a short, fat main house because my guest house is in the way, or the guest house is in the way.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, the square footage of the guest house is included in lot cover, well, it's included in floor area and in any structure where the roof is included in lot coverage.
I guess saying it a different way, if this was a vacant lot that was purchased and somebody said, I want to build on it, they would be required with all of the current code setbacks of 10 feet. They can build a house of X. They can cover the lot to a certain extent, a certain percentage, and get a permit for that, and the neighbors would not have an issue, and the city would award them a permit. They can build whatever the ratio of house is to that lot. If it left enough room for a guest house, then they could build a guest house. If there wasn't enough room, if they had used up the allotted usable space in the main house, then the city would then deny them a permit to build a guest house.
Correct, because it would exceed floor area ratio requirements.
Right.
Or,
So
yeah.
the guest house has usurped the buildable space on the lot, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else that want to speak? You ready to come up? Nope. Okay. You've got 5 minutes? 5 minutes. Okay, thanks.
Asik Benachekanian, 3467 Ocean View Boulevard. To respond to this questions and comments for the trash, Mr. Cohen mentioned we have a kind of 6 inches curb in the garage. So we're planning to raise up the garage floor to be leveled with that. If you notice on the proposed garage floor plan, there's a 9 feet door, and next to it, it's a 3 feet door. And that would be kind of, just a good area to keep the trash container. So that wouldn't be any problem. Do you want me to come?
Right up here.
Yes, yes, on that wall. So that line is gone, and if you notice on the section for the garage in the bottom, so that it's one level. Floor of the garage is just one level.
So this line doesn't mean anything?
No, no, we will kind of, just raise that slab up to cover that line, 6 inches.
The interior of the interior of the garage is all one level. There's no step.
Would be one level, correct. Mr. Cohen kind of, mentioned duplex, so no one could accuse anyone of following the city rules. So if you are allowed to have a guest house, so you could have a guest house, that's the responsibility of an owner in a given time, not to use that to kind of, rent it out or use it for any other purposes. So that's the a reason of guest house, nothing else. So we are not responsible for that. For the foundation, Mr. Cohen mentioned no permit for the foundation. We applied for a parking reduction. That took at least a few months to go through that. And the building was not in a safe condition. We thought that maybe if we apply for a foundation, sorry, I didn't laugh when you were talking. Okay, accepted. So the only reason was that, to start the foundation to reinforce the existing structure of the building and added a bunch of braces to hold the structure in place. For the 20 feet of building, yes, you could have 10 or 12 feet of building. Is that a building kind of, appropriate or not? That's the big question. Yes, you could squeeze a unit in 20 feet wide, but I believe it's not the unit we are talking about. Mr. Goldstein, I'm sorry, we have to, while doing construction, you have to have a big trucks coming in, but when you're done, there's no truck. I'm sorry for that. I personally apologize to you many, many times. I'm sorry. But while doing construction, there is no small, mixer. So those are big stuff. Even I spoke to my partner saying that, if it's possible to get your permission to use your property, even compensate you for that property, and use that for kind of, concrete mixers to come in from the back and put the concrete for the building. For the doors, the existing building, the existing door, everything else was the way that it was, and we kept the same concept for the new guest house and the house. Obviously, we're going to have landscape area. We presented the landscape plan along that property line with Mr. Goldstein. We will provide a kind of shrub or kind of natural green area to block the view. So we will do that. Mr. John Moe, I'm sorry, I could kind of continue very quick for the parking. So the building, the nature of the property had a guest house, 500 square feet, and 1,142 square feet, 1,152 square feet of the house. So those were existing. So for the parking, I guess, it's irrelevant to talk for the parking. It had one car garage and a guest house and a 1,152 square feet of house. So I think it's kind of, we're keeping the same thing and just asking for a small addition for the house to make it more livable. I'm sorry, my time is up, and if we have to compromise a little bit of square feet, let's say instead of adding 240, maybe 200 square feet would be something acceptable, or 180 would be something acceptable. So we have no problem with that.
All right.
Thank you.
Sure, thanks. I've got a few questions, and let me just go down them, and it may require the applicant to come back up, or the planner, or someone else. You need to... okay. Why don't you come up? I'll give you a minute.
Take a minute. My name is
Okay.
Cheryl Gillum. The guest house, as he calls it, has not been occupied since 1961. The gentleman that owned the house had rheumatoid arthritis, and it became impossible for him to visit his house. It was a house that he left and became very ill, and was probably not occupied for him by 10 years during his terminal illness while he died. It was a house that he was a kind man, it was a good place, and he only had one car up there. And I know this because this house has been ours since 1961. So again, parking is the issue. There's only a place up there for 1.5 cars, and that's assuming that the owner uses the garage for a parking, which no owner ever uses the garage for parking anymore. Thank you.
Do you have a response to that? Since
We understand the parking issue, but the reason we're trying to raise up the floor of the garage is to maintain. Maybe if we are able, initially we were trying to kind of park 2 small cars. I think it's possible. With taking that step out, we'll be able to park 2 cars. But with the zoning code, I believe that's impossible.
well, I'm not... The plans show a flat garage. Where's the step?
Can I come over?
Sure.
Thank you. This is the step here.
Okay, that initially delineated a step, and
Yes.
that's gone now, or proposed?
No, it's not. Let me draw a line section from here. This is the nature of the garage now. This is the step, about 6 inches. If we fill this up, then we're going to have one open space.
Oh, I
the
see.
entire area.
Okay.
But since we are not allowed to go over this, even though we used to use this, kind of park the car, and our neighbors kind of park their car in here. A part of the car is in the public right of way.
Correct.
In the city is an alley. So in that case, if you provide this as kind of just larger door, we could kind of squeeze 2 small cars. It's not easy, but it's possible. Mini Cooper. I parked 2 Mini Coopers here.
Mini Coopers are
Yep.
pretty small. Okay. Just for clarity's sake, there were earlier plans that had a wider, a 15-foot wide garage door. Those plans have been superseded by the 9-foot. So, let me go over some questions now. Okay, with the reduction in the garage door width, no part of the driveway is on someone else's property, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. The existing house, how big was that?
The county assessors show it to be approximately 942 square feet.
Okay. And the new house is 1392. So, that is roughly, if I do my math, 420, there's a 420 square foot difference. You mentioned up there, you were adding 200 and change. Where does the there's a difference then of about 200 square feet. Where is that? Yeah.
The existing footprint of the house is exactly 1,152 square feet, even though the assessor's record shows 946, but in reality is more than that. 1152. My initial calculation showed 1140.
So where, okay, the assessor says 950.
Right. In reality, it's 200 square feet more. And I brought this to Mr. Collins' attention at the beginning, and I told him that, this is the story that, I have to go to assessor's office and have them, just correct their file. But in reality, if you just kind of, check the existing footprint of the building, it's 1,140 square feet.
Okay, and so it's been like that since whenever it was built?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
No more. Yeah, actually, I need to probably close the public hearing, and then I'll just ask my questions. There are no indigenous trees on the site, correct? They're just...
Yes, there are.
There are?
Yeah.
You need to come up and speak in the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. On the site, no. Indigenous, no. There are 3 trees, oak trees, next to the property line on the north.
Okay.
Which I showed on the plan, on the site plan. 3 oak
And
trees.
I noticed on the plans you have the mitigation measures.
Yes.
With the setbacks that you're proposing, the 2-foot and the 7-foot. And so with those mitigation measures, you would be able to construct what you want to construct where you want to construct it without impacting those trees negatively.
Yes, we could do that because there is an existing retaining wall to the property to the north. As I mentioned, they're in higher elevation.
Okay, I remember that.
That's their retaining wall.
Okay.
And there was foundation, and we're just kind of, maintaining the existing foundation. So everything is existing now.
Okay.
We're not changing the nature. Even we trimmed that tree from our pocket, paid for from our pocket.
Okay. The retaining, there's a variance request for a less than 5-foot separation. You're required to have 5 feet separation between retaining walls. So there are areas in here that are less than 5 feet. These 2 retaining walls were there, and so they're legal non-conforming?
That's correct.
Okay. This one is new? Okay. Why couldn't it be moved, I guess, closer to the guest house in this case to comply with the 5-foot separation requirements?
Can I come over? Explain.
Yeah.
There's an elevation, it's kind of, section showing exactly, just in case of this wall. There's a section exactly going from here. This is the section. So this is the existing permitted block wall, 1985. These are all stone walls existing. We're not kind of, touching. Even with the recommendation of building department, we try to kind of, minimize the height of this. So this wall is here.
Right. Okay. This wall is
This wall.
this.
Yeah. This is this wall. Now,
Okay.
now it is up to here. So we're trying to kind of, reduce the height of that wall in order to kind of, make it a little bit kind of, stronger and just kind of, go step by step. That's
Okay, actually, that leads me to another question before you answer my first question. Is that what, there are some plans that show I thought I saw plans that showed existing retaining wall height, new retaining wall height?
Those are this one. Yeah, you're right. Here. These are new retaining wall, and new retaining wall here.
No, actually, it was
With the permit.
on
These are all existing.
existing.
Maybe here, you saw
Are
here.
you-
Permitted retaining wall.
Oh, here
this
we
is
go.
permitted.
I'm sorry, this is where I'm referring to. Shortened wall height, existing wall height.
Right.
So,
Those are exactly here. See, along this line, we have a step down to shorten the height of the retaining wall. So see here, this dash line?
Yeah.
This is the existing retaining wall all the way to the end, which is kind of shorten the height of the wall.
okay, this is the existing retaining wall.
Right.
That is closest to the
House.
house.
Yes.
Which is too close to the other retaining walls,
Correct.
which means while it's existing, it
Less than 5 feet.
didn't get a permit and needs a permit, correct?
We had a permit. We have a permit for that to repair these walls. We have a permit to repair these walls, which is a part of the original permit. Sorry. Here. So in this drawing, we have permit for all these walls.
Actually, why don't we just move it up?
I'm sorry. So this drawing specifically shows that what specifically for the retaining walls, existing retaining walls. Reduce the height and repair these corners.
Okay. Whoops. Sorry. Okay, so
Yes, sir.
this retaining wall here is the one that you're shortening,
Yes, sir.
correct?
Yes.
And this retaining wall here in areas is closer to these retaining walls than 5 feet.
Correct.
And that is one of the variance requests.
Correct.
I guess I'm confused then, because if this was existing and just in need of repair, that implies that it was legally built there, and then why would a variance be needed? It would be a
Here.
To the right. Guest house, right
Here.
in there.
These
Main
one.
area.
These are not
There was
new.
less
These
than
are
5
existing. Again, those are these walls.
okay. So this area is less than 5 feet, and these are new walls. Okay, so this is the area that actually requires the variance, not all this. Is that correct?
Right. Those are existing walls. We just repaired them.
Because if they were existing and legally built, they wouldn't need a variance. If they weren't legally built, then they would need a variance. So you're saying that it's just this area where the walls are new and they're built closer than 5 feet, which would kick in the variance. Okay, where in this line here is, where does it end being existing and become new?
If you have time, I'll be more than happy anytime come to your office and I'll discuss this with drawings and everything else. with
Well, we
pictures.
need to do it here.
Here, okay. So, I'm sorry. So, I'm saying these walls, these are existing. They were damaged, so we repaired them, all existing. Now, they are not 5 feet apart from each other, correct? But these are existing walls.
Okay, were they permitted? Was there a permit?
None
for
of
them?
these walls, we couldn't find any permit for any of these walls, none of them. In the city file, there is no indication of any permitted wall, other than only here, just a small retaining wall, block wall, that was permitted on 1982. It was built by permit on 1982.
Okay,
Only this one. Only this one.
okay.
None other walls, other than the ones that we got permit, they had permit. We couldn't find any indication of permit in the city.
Right, I'm assuming that the retaining walls that we're talking about are on the south side of the guest house, because it was my understanding on the north side of the guest house, those were all recently permitted.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
Other than those, other than these walls, and this wall, and this wall, smart wall, none of the other walls have permit, I'm assuming. But they're all existing and very old. With this
Okay.
nature, with this nature.
Right, I remember
Stone
with the
walls.
walls.
Right.
So, okay, so let me see if I'm clear in understanding this. What you're saying is all three of these retaining walls are really the same situation. They've been there forever. We don't have permit records for any of them.
Right.
But then in this area here, they're new. Okay.
Because
All
we
right.
repaired them.
All right. Is there, are you, you're showing that these are, the retaining walls here are shortened?
Yes.
What's,
This wall is shortened, this portion shortened about
Right.
8 inches. This wall is shortened about 24 inches, which is this area. See, here. This and this and this shortened 24 inches.
okay,
Here.
from the existing condition now?
Yes, yes.
So if I go out today, they're going to be the non-shortened height.
Non-shortened height.
Okay, is there a reason why you're shortening them?
Because of a building recommendation, they said, these are kind of, structural, and why not to just kind of, make it a little bit less higher to add to the safety factor. That's all.
Okay. All right, what walls are going to be removed from the garage and what walls are remaining?
Just these two walls. This wall and this wall. Because the survey shows that
Those two are
Yes.
removed.
these are correct. Because they're going beyond the property line and it shouldn't be. So we have to remove this wall and put a new block, concrete block wall in order to maintain that, just fire separation.
Okay, and so the north and the east walls are going to remain?
Yes. This wall, so we already took this wall out to provide a new door and this door.
Oh, so that wall,
Yeah, this is gone. We have to provide a new wall for this one and this one. And this one is a retaining wall, and that will stay.
okay, so the site plan, where it says new garage wall, should be here, here, and there.
Yes, here, here, and here, exactly.
Just a clarification for the planner. All retaining wall heights are okay, it's just the distance separation, correct? The heights of all the
They're
retaining walls?
considered existing and appear to be built about the same time as the original house.
Okay, all right. And the slope between the retaining walls is fine?
According to the applicant, that's
Yeah.
correct.
Yes.
Okay. What would it take for you to meet the separation requirements for the retaining walls? What?
In some cases, impossible, because here, this is about maybe about 3 feet. If you were to kind of move this over, then we have 3 feet and something for a walking distance for this guest unit. And then we would have to kind of reduce that to 2 feet, which is not legal. Minimum 3 feet is required for
Okay.
building.
How about other areas?
We're already pushing this back about 30 inches. We already kind of placed the rebars. I don't know. Maybe it's possible to not to touch this, but just remove this over here. These are all the 18 inches wall. Just a case of 18 inches wall. This is 18 inches high. It's even not a retaining wall. It's a garden wall.
Okay.
Here. See? This is 18 inches. This is 22 inches. It's even not a retaining wall. It's considered a garden wall. Especially these two.
Okay. I think those were all my questions. So, at this time, I'm going to end the hearing. Thanks for coming, and the meeting is over at 11:08. Thanks.